Welcome to Flourish. Today we have an interview about boundaries in relationships. We are going to be talking with Jalissa Shelby. Jalissa is a licensed therapist and she specializes in couples therapy, family therapy, premarital counseling. Welcome, Jalissa.
Thank you so
I'm
much.
so excited. I'm so excited for this conversation, Jalissa. In relationships, it's kind of hard to set boundaries because your partner is in your personal space all the time. And love is a space where we really don't think about, well, I need to set some boundaries because automatically when you think boundaries, you think distrust. Like, I don't trust this person. Let me set a boundary.
Hey, you guys, it's Seporia. Thank you for watching. This interview is so bomb. You're going to learn so much. But I wanted to take a moment to just remind you to hit the subscribe button. Subscribing is your way of letting us know that you support the content, that you like the content, you want us to continue to create content, and it is absolutely free. So go ahead right now, take a second and hit the subscribe button. I thank you so much for your support. I appreciate all of you and enjoy the interview.
So, my first question for you is, what prevents us from setting proper boundaries in our relationships?
So it can be so many things that prevents people from wanting to set those boundaries. Sometimes it's the fact that they don't even know these boundaries need to be set. How you grow up is very different oftentimes from how your partner grows up. Everybody's wired differently. Everybody's experience differs from the next. And so what happens is we carry our experiences and the way we're wired with us, and we find a partner who is very different. And that leads to bumping heads so much. And so the way we were raised, the way we were groomed, and the way we just view boundaries in general may be very different from our partners. Fear is also a very big thing about why so many people don't speak up about a lot of things in relationships. The fear of, am I going to be misunderstood about what I'm trying to say? Am I going to offend my partner? When you're in a relationship and you love and you care for somebody, the last thing you want to do is upset them or make them feel like, you don't trust them or that, you don't want them around. It comes from a place of love, but it may not be the best way to go about it by completely just ignoring your own needs. So I would say like those are kind of some of the major things that I see when people are not putting forth these boundaries that are meant to protect them and their relationship.
Yeah. And I know you counsel people of all ages. Does that change with age at all? Like your ability to set boundaries and be comfortable with setting those boundaries?
So not always. So we have this thing about time and this idea that time and the days moving forward and the weeks is just going to fix things. I don't believe that time heals all wounds. Time doesn't make people do things differently, but it's what you do with that time and what you experience with that time.
Wow, yeah.
That can change things. So a lot of times it's experience, and that experience doesn't have to take a week or a year. It just differs from person to person. What have you learned from past experiences? What is your point of, what, I have to do something different in order to make things better for you moving forward?
We're going to jump right into sex because we have all had it. And are going to have it at some point. It is a natural thing. And so we're going to talk about sexual boundaries, because if you are in a relationship, and of course we have flourished, we support the biblical thought that marriage, sex is within the confines of marriage. We understand, though, if you're watching this interview, that you may not feel that way, and you may believe otherwise. And so all of us need to understand the importance of sexual boundaries, whether you're in marriage or in any type of sexual relationship. So how do we find our sexual boundaries, especially if we have experienced trauma?
Okay, so there's a few things. In order to know your boundaries, you have to know yourself. You can't express something to your partner that you have no idea about yourself. Sometimes we have ideas in our head, and it doesn't mean that you have to have experience in these things. But some things are definitely a hard no for you. Some people just are not comfortable and they don't have
Wow.
the hard discussions up front. So, what does that look like? I see so many people who are not satisfied or they're fearful of expressing certain things because they wait so long. Wait until you're in the midst of it and it doesn't feel right when you're in the middle of sex and you're like, oh, I don't want that to happen. So I encourage people to have those conversations when you feel it's appropriate, but on the sooner end. So if that's a premarital counseling situation, what does that look like? There are a lot of hard no's out there for men and women. What don't you like? What don't you want done to you? What are your must-haves? That's a boundary too. This is something that I need. In terms of trauma, I strongly suggest, anybody who has experience with sexual trauma to seek out counseling for that. And that can help you dissect your experience and how that has affected you and how that may affect your partner. So I'm not very big on people pushing their trauma out there before they're ready. That's not the way to go. I say definitely start in-house, work with a therapist, and once you get comfortable enough to share your story and share your experience with your partner, then you can do that.
Wow.
But those hard no's can also incorporate that trauma. They just don't have to know that that's a reason. Sometimes your hard no is a hard no.
If you are in a relationship right now and you know that you don't have boundaries, you know that this person gets to call me, text me whenever they feel like it a million times, and I have to pick up the phone or they're angry. I don't get to have my personal time. I don't get to have sexual boundaries. I just do whatever he or she likes. How do you begin to set boundaries in a relationship that you're already in, that's already started?
So that's always tough, once you're in the midst of it. And so one thing I encourage my couples to do is to set the tone of having conversations about different things. So that leaves the door open for feedback sessions. So if that's, every Friday night, we're going to get together and we're going to give each other feedback on things. We're going to talk about our experience in this relationship and tapping into the other person's experience. That is so rarely done. Sometimes someone having loose boundaries with you, or they're intruding into your personal space, they're texting you too much, that can come from many different sources, many different places. So you want to be mindful of that, for one, to make sure that you're not in a situation that is unhealthy. If that's the case, I definitely encourage you to seek professional help or assistance with that. Sometimes it's just someone cares so much about you and they don't know how to manage that. They just they just want to care about you. They're thinking about you and realizing that, I have 50 other things going on. And they're just excited. And so it comes from a place of excitement, but they're not understanding of how that affects you and what your experience with that is. So usually we come and we talk about how we feel. But we already know how we feel, right? You know how you feel. You know how you're affected. You understand what your stance is. Being able to tap into the other person's story and how they're feeling allow you to have a different level of clarity from them, and vice versa.
Wow. Yeah.
Once you start to hear someone, that increases your chances of being heard also. And then you find where you need to meet in the middle through those 1 hour conversations a week. This is what I'm experiencing this week. I was busy at work and these different things happened and I wasn't able to focus as much as I wanted to. And while I appreciate you being so excited about me and love and care for me, maybe during these times when I'm at work, it may be a little bit too much. So going from there.
I know that you do premarital counseling. What are some steps we can take to find out what our boundaries are prior to getting in a relationship or being married.
So self-exploration can definitely help you. Looking at your past experiences. What went wrong? What went right for you? What are some of the things that you know you don't want to happen that have happened before? What makes you feel safe in your relationship? It's going to really take some reflecting. I encourage people to journal and write these things down, because once you start writing, you see things in a different way when it's on paper. Being able to identify that and get comfortable expressing yourself. I think oftentimes that's the hardest part about setting boundaries. It's the expression of what you want and what you're looking for. Sometimes we know, we just don't have the assertiveness to say something. And so, you spoke about talking about these boundaries in a healthy way, and the way that I said that, that's how I teach my couples. So it's actually a formula. Sometimes you get so fed up with how things are going in the relationship because you just sit on it. You sit on it and you get frustrated, and then you blow up. You get very angry. Criticism is one of the worst things that you can do when it comes to communicating with your partner. Criticism is like the number one indicator that you're not going to be listened to. Nobody wants to hear someone being critical of them. And so the way that I teach my couples is that you have to come with a gentle startup whenever you're bringing an issue up. So if that's addressing a boundary, and the formula that I give my couples is you talk about what the emotion is. How is this making you feel? So being able to really analyze the emotion, and sometimes that goes beyond happy, sad, mad. Sometimes that is, I feel alone in the situation. I feel like what I need doesn't matter. That feeling can run very deep. So stating how you feel, and then identifying, what is this about? And that is how you take that blame off. This isn't about you. This is just about my boundaries being intruded upon. This is about me and the boundaries. I'm not blaming you. And then you go and talk about what you need from that person, because that's like one of the pieces when we talk about issues that we're having. I talk about how I feel. I talk about, why I'm upset. But what do I need from you? This is how you can help me. This is how we can move forward with this situation. And then the little magic sprinkle on top is the why. Why is this so important to you? Because it goes back to people being wired in different ways. We were raised differently. My understanding just might be very different from you. I love you and I care about you. I want to spend all my time with you. So I don't understand why it's an issue. But being able to listen to that person's why and their reasoning can be the most important factor of it all. Because even if I don't hear or understand what you want me to do, I may just go ahead and do it because I understand your why and I care about your why.
So that brings me to the thought of family. How do we set familial boundaries in relationships? So basically, how do you keep your families out of your marriages, out of your business, out of your relationships?
It is so important to have those boundaries. When I think about boundaries, I think about a fence for a home, right? So you have this fence to protect certain things and to keep things safe and inside, but also you have that fence to keep certain things out, right? Sometimes that fence is for your family and your in-laws and your friends too, right? So you have to have a conversation up front. I'm very big on communicating as much as possible up front. What are some of the things that are off limits for your family and your friends to know about your relationship? And that has to be, a conversation. Some couples are very open, but it's about you navigating what's best for you in that relationship as a couple. Boundaries are also taught. So what you learn has been passed down from generation to generation to generation. And sometimes that just needs to come to a halt. And so you encourage boundaries in families by allowing children to have a voice, encouraging people to be able to express themselves and bring up concerns in appropriate ways. So that's how we kind of allow that to trickle down so that we can stop all of this, this madness that goes on in relationships sometimes. But in terms of those family members and those friends who are already in right now, there's no easy way. You have to sometimes make the hard decisions. You have to do the work. And so that means changing up what you talk about. It has to be times where you say, you know what, that's something that we just can't talk about anymore. You have to get comfortable with being assertive because your relationship needs to be protected. At the end of the day, things go on in relationships. We have our ups and downs. And so one thing you always want to do is to be mindful and remember that those downs come back up. You love that person in a way that your family and your friends may not. And so that love that they have for you will overpower the fact that I've forgiven this person.
Yes.
Because they'll still be upset. And then at family dinners and holidays, it's tense.
They treat them funny.
And it's all because there was a little bit of information shared.
Yeah.
So sometimes we just have to identify, who can be your go-to people, because people need that though.
Yeah.
You need an outlet. So is that a counselor who's bound by confidentiality and can't tell anybody your business? That's
what I've resorted to.
Yeah. Is that gonna be okay? I'm okay with you talking to this friend because I trust this friend of yours and I understand that their guidance for you would not be anything that puts our relationship in jeopardy. These people over here are definitely off limits because we know too many of the same people. You just really have to identify what's going to work for you and get comfortable saying no to the people who have comments. You have to protect your partner.
I love the thought of you and your partner kind of in this fence together, because it really speaks to like God's purpose for relationships and for marriage, that they are sacred. And it's something that a lot of times we lose in the malarkey of everything else that goes on. We often forget that this is supposed to be me and this person, like a one-to-one thing. And it's supposed to be us creating this together, and anyone else that's outside of it doesn't count. Know if the boundaries that you built are healthy versus unhealthy boundaries. How do you know the difference?
So one way you can tell is by how it makes you feel. Do you feel safe in your relationship? Does this feel controlling? Do my friends and my family fear for me, even if they don't know the details? These might be people that are completely out, but they're worried. And a lot of times there may be very valid reasons for that. Are you able to have a certain level of freedom? Sometimes boundaries that are just too loose are just as dangerous as the boundaries that are too rigid. Does this person care about me? Do I feel like I matter in this relationship? When those feelings start to speak to you, you have to listen. And you have to identify what's missing. What's the missing link? What is it that you need? So self-reflection is going to be imperative. And with self-reflection comes self-awareness. And once you become aware of certain things and you can verbalize important things to yourself that are missing from your relationship or boundaries that need to be set, then you owe yourself at that point. Self-awareness comes with responsibility. Once you open up that door and you say you know something, it's your duty to do something about it.
My last question. What are some things, because I am single and we're going to talk to the single ladies. We've talked a lot about relationships, but what are some things we can do now to prep ourselves for a healthy, happy, whole relationship?
So it's all going to be about working on yourself, working on your self-esteem, working on knowing what you bring to the table. So I do a lot of work with individuals recovering from breakups, right? And so we're working and we're preparing them for themselves, and so that they can move forward and have these healthy relationships moving forward. And one of my first questions is, tell me, why are you all at? I'm very 90s. You all at in a bag of chips. Tell me why. And some people really struggle with that. So knowing your worth, literally writing it down. I love sticky notes. Put your worth on paper so that you can see it and add to that list. And you have to really dissect, I went to school. What did it take for you to go to school? You didn't just go and they gave you a piece of paper. You had some things about you that allowed you to accomplish things in life. What are you worth? And then I like to encourage people to write down their ideal partner. What does that look like? And then when you cross and compare, you can slowly start to see, why do you deserve that person on paper? And why that person on paper deserves you just as much. And then you can look at these experiences in the past, right? These other people. We can look and see, a lot of times they're like, wow, I was really out here settling. I did not know my worth. Because once you know what you're worth, you know what you deserve. And you also know what you won't tolerate anymore. You got me giving away all my therapy stuff.
I love it. I'm sitting here taking notes like this is a personal therapy session for me. I'm like, okay, why am I all of that in a bag of chips? Let me make sure I go write that after this. Ladies, write down why you're all that in a bag of chips. Don't take that away. Take that away from this. Jalissa, this has been such a good time. I thank you so much for all of your advice. I can just tell that you are just an amazing therapist. I know that the couples and the people that are your clients are so lucky to have you, and we're lucky to have you on. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me and just allowing me to share a little bit about, what I do and the tips that other people can benefit from. I appreciate you so much for thinking about me when it came to this. You could have chosen anybody. So I just really appreciate you and what you're doing for others.